levels right. Call y'all about Shemel Shah. This video is in part about showing who the 12 tribes are today, right? So, where I want to go with it is, let me see if I can do this proper. Ignore that. Alright. I go to Genesis 49 because that's going to give us a good starting point. Let's start with Genesis 49 from the top. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together, and hear ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. All right. So one of the first tribes I'm gonna deal with is Reuben. Right. I got some history pulled up on my laptop as well over here. I don't know if I'll be able to get that on camera. Let me see if that even works. Get this on camera. See, that's too bright. Yeah, that's too bright. So I'll probably just have to read it. Yeah, I'll just have to read it. That's cool. So we'll start with Reuben. Verse 3. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might in the beginning of my strength, and the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. Because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. Now we know Reuben slept with a woman of his father, a woman of who belonged to Jacob, right? And I have an example that we know, as the Israelites, we know that Reuben represents the Seminole Indians, right? And of the Seminole Indians, they were great at war, right? And they had great dignity. I'm going to prove it with this one link I found. There's something called the Seminole Wars. There was 3 parts of the Seminole War. First Seminole War happened in 1816, lasted to 1819, right? And it began with Andrew Jackson into the excursions of Spanish Florida. Florida is where you'll find the Seminole Indians dwelling, right? And at the end of this war, it resulted that the Seminole Indians were removed from northern Florida to a reservation in the center of the Florida Peninsula, right? The Second War started in 1835 through 1842. That would be 7 years, right? So they went through a 3-year war, and then after that, about 18 so years later, if my math is on point, they went through another war for 7 years, right? And this war took place, right, for 7 years under General Thomas Sidney Jessup, who was sent to Florida to take command in 1836, right? Now, what they did was they abducted some of the Seminole leaders under a false flag of truce. Boom. But the end result of this particular second war is the Seminole never settled for a treaty, right? And as well, several hundred of the Seminole Indians, as they called them, remained in now the Southwest Florida. So they kept moving them down in Florida. Now the third and final Seminole War is from 1855, which would be 20 years later from the start of the last, to 1858. Right? That's 3 years again. And as it reads, The Third Seminole War was precipitated as an increasing number of settlers in southwest Florida led to increasing tensions with Seminoles living in the areas. So all these Europeans started coming to the south, but they're trying to push them till there's no more land to go to, right? And this forced a raid of a fort. And the end result of this, as the Seminoles were nearing starvation and they were war weary after fighting a war from 1858 all the way back to 1816. Come on, that's about 40 years of war, right? What ended up happening is some settled to live on reservations. There's also, and for safe passage and cash payments on the reservations. We all know today the reservations aren't the best living situations. They're what we call ghettos. As well as said an estimated 200 to 500 Seminoles and small family bands still refused to leave and retreated deep into the Everglades and the Big Cypress Swamp to live on land considered unsuitable by American settlers. So why do I bring that out and why does it equate to what I read? Well, it says in verse 3, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, and the excellency of dignity. Now, it takes a certain strength to be able to fight this war for 40 years and not falter, not give into a treaty and things as such like that. And even when you were war weary after 40 years, there was still 200 to 500 that still wasn't down for that and retreated to a land where they could dwell safely. That's the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Because these Europeans couldn't take them out. You understand? They can't make a treaty with them and they can't take them out. That's just one, and the unstable as water goes into the mentality of Reuben. The fact that we see as a result of the Third War, there were some who settled for the cash payment and safe passage, and then there were some who wasn't with that and went to go find their own lands to dwell, right? Now, verse 5, Genesis 49 and 5, we move on to Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitation. O my Lord, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Now, the last part of verse 7 is very important as far as the location of Simeon and Levi. Now, Simeon and Levi are mentioned together, right? Because they conspired with their brothers to go against the Canaanites to kill them after what they did to Dinah, their sister, right? That's why it says instruments of cruelty are in their habitation, because they called these damn Hamites slipping. They called them while they was in anguish from their circumcision, saying, yeah, y'all join us. The father said, yeah, y'all join us, and this will be forgiven for you laying with my daughter. They said, nah. Simeon and Levi will be what we call the Dominicans and the Haitians today. Now, we know no Dominican and Haitian is really playing with their sister like that, so it don't matter what Pops say. If something happened to the sister, they gonna want to handle that. You understand? So, going further into it, like I was saying, the latter part of verse 7, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel, right? So, Simeon and Levi are on this, or Dominican Republic and Haiti are on the same island. Very small island, but they're on that same island. Now, that was split. the Most High ordained that. Who came and split them? Europeans. You got Europeans on one side, the Spaniards, and then you got the French on the other side. So the French took over Haiti, or subjugated Haiti, and the Spaniards subjugated the Dominican Republic. And it said the whole island was named Haiti at a point, but that's neither here nor there. We get to the point that they were divided in Jacob. Well, they're on an island, and they're divided amongst each other. And they were mentioned together. And they will be scattered through Israel. Which is another reason not in this video to prove, but this is explaining how Haitians are scattered throughout Israel. You can find Haitians in South America, Guatemala, Ecuador, North America. Anywhere there's Israelites, you can find Simeon or Levi. Predominantly Levi. Because Levi they have no inheritance. Well, their inheritance is based off of what the children of Israel are to give to the Levites, right? So they would be in the midst of Israel, right? That's another verse. They would be in the midst of Israel. Let me see if I can get that real quick. Or in the middle of the congregation, right? But let me move on, not so this video will be too long. And it goes on to verse 8. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemy. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, and he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Now this goes into Judah, who we know as the so-called American Negroes, right? I don't like saying African Americans, whom we know as the American Negroes, right? As well as some of our people from West Africa, right? As well. You got some Ephraim over there as well. But getting into Judah, it says, thou art whom thy brethren shall praise. Now here in America, we know that anything that a Negro does, it is praised, whether it's good or bad, right? It's the new craze, it's the new trend, the new fad to do. If I wear my hat inside out and upside down, you feel me? It's gonna be the new shit next week. You can see it. You see it in the style. If Kanye West go do something tomorrow, people gonna be on that for at least a week. You feel me? You look at it in the music, the athleticism, the entertainment, anything that the American Negro puts their hand to, people are gonna follow it. Like you got reggaeton, right? That's following hip hop. Everything from hip hop, right? We have hip hop, breakdancing, we got graffiti, right? That comes from the nations following Judah. Now, who created hip hop was not just Judah. It was Judah, Benjamin. We got Ephraim as well. Now, Judah is the American Negro. Ephraim will be the Puerto Ricans. And Benjamin will be what you would call the Jamaicans, West Indians, Guyanese, those brothers, right? So moving forward on who Judah would be as the so-called American Negroes. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thy enemies. Thy father shall bow down, thy father's children shall bow down before thee. So that's going into the Israelites praising Judah. Anything that Judah does, the rest of Israel, being the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, they see that and they follow to do that. Because Judah in America, you even got down to the civil rights. Once the NAACP formed, and you know, Rosa Parks didn't want to sit at the back of the bus. Martin Luther King wanted to march because he was tired of people getting hosed down. Malcolm X wanted to stand out the window with the gun cocked. Brothers wasn't having it. So then you see other Israelites or other Hispanics and other natives fighting as well for the same equality as Judah or as the American Negro together. In the Black Panther Party, it was not just Negroes, it was also Hispanics. And that's what people don't know as well. And it goes on to say, Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey, my son, thou art gone up. And he stooped down, he couched as a lion, as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? So the lion's whelp is his eagerness to capture his prey, right? When Judah was in it, when we go to the early stages of America, when the American Negro was fighting for his freedom and our liberties, right? To be revolutionaries. We got Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party. He coined the phrase, "I am a revolutionary," and that's Judah, right? Now, as an old lion, as we are now today, who will rise us up is the question. Of course, the Most High will rise us up. But to go on to, there's a bit more on that. Let's move on to Zebulon, the tribe of Zebulon, in verse 13. Zebulon shall dwell at the haven of the ships, and he shall be for an haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. Now, I have a map at the back of my Bible, right? And it says Zebulon would be a haven for ships, right? Now, if you could see, Zebulon is right there. That's in the middle of land. There's no way Zebulon could be a haven for any ships where the water is out here. This is how we know that Zebulon is as well prophetically speaking. Isaac is prophesying to the children right here, right? Prophetically saying that Zebulon will be a haven for ships, right? And this is how we know that Zebulon is the Central Americans. The, what do you call it? The Mayans, right? You call it the so-called Mayans, right? You got it from Panama. You got Ecuador, right? And that's where, if I could pull up a map real quick, you got the Panama Canal, right? The Panama Canal is technically and actually a haven for ships. We got Panama Canal, right? Is a waterway in Panama that connects the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean and divides North and South America, being Central America, right? The canal cuts across the Isthmus of Panama and is a conduit for maritime trade. A conduit for maritime trade is another word for haven of ships. And if I read on, one of the largest and most difficult engineering projects ever undertaken, the Panama Canal shortcut greatly reduces the time for ships to travel between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, enabling them to avoid the lengthy, hazardous Cape Horn route around the southernmost tip of South America, right? That's there proving that Panama and Central America is a haven for ships, right? Then it moves on to verse 14. Issachar. Issachar, who we know today is the so-called Azteca or the Mexicans, right? Now, Judah would be in North America, Seminole will be in Florida, Zebulon in Central America, and Issachar in Mexico, as well as where they were in California, but the white man pushes them down. So, Issachar is a strong ass couching between two burdens. And he saw that the rest was good, and the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulders to bear and became a servant unto tribute. That servant unto tribute is Issachar finding good land and taking care of that land, and cultivating that land and standing strong on where he is. And we know when you look at Mexico's, what's an animal when you think of Mexico? You got the donkey, which is a strong ass. Now, a donkey is not just good for heavy labor and actually holding those burdens, right? A donkey is good for defense. It was a brother that we were talking to at the Feast of Tabernacles. He says, a donkey is better than a guard dog. A donkey will kick the shit out of a nigga if he intrudes on your land, if he don't know you, and kill him. And that's interesting, because that's how strong Issachar would be. So, just to keep in mind, this in Genesis 49 is in geographical order. As I said, you got Reuben being the Seminole Indians of Florida. You got Judah being the American Negro. You got Zebulon being Central America. And you have Issachar being Mexico. Let me see if I look up this Mexican flag. Bear with me. Alright. No. Okay. Alright. Then we move on to verse 19. We're still dealing with this northern Central America area. I move on to 19. Gad. Gad will be the Native American Indians. Gad. A troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at last. Now, Gad means troop. I also should have went into Issachar, the names of the brethren. I'll do that toward the end of the video to give more validity to what I'm saying. Gad means troop, right? Now, Gad says, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at last. Now we know, not if many know, the Native Americans, they were of many nations. What you call a Native American is made up of many different tribes in America. There was a treaty made for all these tribes to come together to make a peace treaty with America, which wasn't upheld by America in totality, which resulted in the Native Americans being pushed to reservations, as well in Canada, what they would call the First Nations, being pushed to subjugation and reservations, right? Out of Asher. Asher will be what we know as the Peruvians, right? As well as, bear with me. 21. So Ashur will be what we know as the Peruvians, right? More specifically on the map, um, Colombia to Uruguay. I say Peruvians because I know a lot of Peruvians, so I call them Ashur all the time. So Colombia to Uruguay. If I can get a map pulled, I can show America map. Now I want the whole. I want the whole America, north and south. All right, boom. Hopefully, let me pull this bitch up. All right, boom. Come on now. Hold on. Like I said, I know you can't see this, but that blue in the middle to the yellow, that area is what you will call Colombia. Well, let me get a better picture. Now my whole thing is messed up. Is what you will call bear with me. You know, if I had all this set up, it'd be much easier. But I got you. Alright? If I had a whole map, I need to buy a map. But the Colombia and Uruguay, right? Boom. Now, out of Ashur, so we know Ashur will be, to summarize again, from the indigenous from Colombia to Uruguay, encompassing Colombia, Peru, Uruguay, right? It says, verse 20, out of Ashur his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Dainties. So the resources in from Colombia to Uruguay, Colombia to Peru are great. If you look at the archaeology and what the indigenous did before the European, what they call it, pre-colonial, pre-Columbus, there was great resources there and great technological advances as well in Zebulon and Issachar. In Zebulon, which will be from Guatemala to Panama, they had floating agriculture where they would grow their gardens were on water. It grew themselves. They had hydroponics and aqueducts for sewage. And this goes into the understanding of Ashur being from Colombia and Peru. And Peru had the similar things. Great resources as far as their food and oil. Is dealing with the oil they had. Lots of good oil deposits. If you look these things up, you'll understand that this is why the Europeans and the Spaniards and the French and etc. wanted to come and pretty much steal the land that the Israelites dwelled on. It's like we came from Israel and they wanted to take that over. And then we went to a land where no man dwelt and they had to take that over because these are the curses. And I'm going to go into the curses as well. Verse 21. Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth good words. Now Naphtali, which will be Argentina to Chile. Let me get that map pulled up again. Get this map pulled up again. Let me see if I can get a different one. Alright. Oh, me see here. See the. Let's see. Get this here. Boom. Boom. Argentina and Chile. This bottom part, the bottom half, is Naphtali. Right? Now, it's not much said on Naphtali, but we know that Argentina and Naphtali, as well as the Asher, have good resources. And another thing to connect with places like Colombia, um, I believe Ecuador, and if you look at the Haiti flag, they all have the blue and red, right? Going back to Levi being scattered through Israel, right? They have that because Levi, the Haitians, helped them win their wars. Now, moving on. Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him, but his bow abode in strength. Now, Joseph is the father of two nations, Ephraim and Manasseh, right? Ephraim being the Puerto Ricans, so-called, and Manasseh being the so-called Cubans, right? Two islands, a grand people. But his bow abode in strength. The arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. Now this goes into why Puerto Rico is named Puerto Rico. When Columbus came to Puerto Rico, they realized how rich it was in minerals, how rich it was in food, how rich it was in precious gems, which is why it was called Puerto Rico, Port of Riches, the rich port, for the specific reason as in the blessings that were given by Yahweh, right? Blessings of the heaven above. The good sunlight and the waters are beautiful, the weather is beautiful, the agriculture, everything grows nicely. Understand? The blessings of the deep that lieth under, as I said. The stones, minerals, etc. The blessing of the breast and of the womb. The women beautiful, the children flourish. That is pre-Columbus. Genesis 49 and 27. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoils. Now Benjamin, as I said earlier, will be who we call the Jamaicans, the West Indians, Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, the West Indies, right? The thing about Benjamin, it says they're raven as a wolf, and in the morning they devour prey, and at night they devour spoils. They divide the spoils. That goes into how, if you look at these cultures, they're very fierce people when they need to be. They get to the money, they gotta get it, all to bring it back to their family. As a wolf goes out to hunt, it destroys what it gets and brings it back to its family. It doesn't eat it all for itself. It takes that, eats some for itself, brings the rest back to its family to divide the spoils. And it says, all these are the, verse 28, all these are the 12 tribes of Israel. That is it that their father spake unto them, and blessed them, everyone according to this blessing, and blessed them. Right? That's going into, so that was me explaining the tribes. We have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, right? We have Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. And then I'm going to go into Deuteronomy 28. And we're going to go into the reason why you'll be able to recognize who these people are. Furthermore, the prophecy. Let's go to 40. Let's go to 45. Deuteronomy 28 and 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahweh thy God, or power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon you for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So when we want to identify who Israel is today, I go to Genesis 49 to understand what their blessings are, right? And then I go to Deuteronomy 28 to realize what their curses are as nations, as an entire nation. And in Deuteronomy 28, the curses is how we realize who are the Israelites today, right? Because all of Israel will be under these curses. And it goes on to further say, upon thy seed forever, because thou servest not the Lord Yahweh thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which Yahweh shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Now that is very key, and there's a reason why I go to that specific piece, because the Native Americans, the so-called Hispanics, the so-called blacks, Negroes, Afro-Americans, Africans, those people were put in yokes of iron, got shackles around their necks, arms, and led into shadow slavery by cavemen, troglodytes, right? So that happened to those people, one nation of Israel. There's no other nation on this earth that was led into slavery with yokes of iron on their necks by one people who were, as I'll get, for a nation from afar whose tongue we would not understand, right? As spoken of also in Deuteronomy 28. As I read on, look at that. The Lord Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth. If we're now over, if the natives are in America, right? Europe is all the way on this side of the earth. We're here. Europe's over here. A nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. Now we know the Spaniards, the French, the German, the English, the Americans, on all of their flags and all of their memorabilia, they have an eagle. They are represented by an eagle. America's bird is the bald eagle. That's not for no reason. That's prophetic. A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. That's key as well, because if they're saying that this happened while we were near Israel or in North Africa or on the west coast of Africa, there there were such things as a lingua franca. A lingua franca. There were languages understood amongst regions that dwelled close to each other because of commerce. It's called a commerce language. Such as Greek, Roman, or Latin, right? Now the lingua franca of today is English. You can't fly a plane unless you know English. Now, when the Europeans came over here speaking English, the natives didn't speak English. When the Europeans came to the coast of West Africa, Judah and Ephraim and the southern kingdom didn't speak English. Who they call Hispanics now didn't speak English. The Haitians didn't speak French. The Dominicans, so-called, didn't speak Spanish. The Southern American countries didn't speak Spanish. So, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. Who was put into slavery from the oldest of us to the youngest of us? Cutting babies out of women's bellies, hanging children, cutting children's hands off, cutting women's feet off, putting them in hot boxes so that they would die of dehydration, tying them up, one arm on one horse, the other arm on the other horse, and slapping the horses so that they go two separate ways, putting them in various torture devices, right? And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kine, or flocks, or thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. We know the white man, European man, Esau, all these various names equate to one person, one group of people, came over here and drained the land of natural resources. All the oil used today comes from North and South America, the land of where the Israelites dwelt before they came here. There's a famous picture that I always think of when I read that scripture, and it's a picture of the buffalo skulls, right? There's this picture. Let me see if I can get it bigger. From the 1870s. Let me get you zoomed in here. Oh, that's fine. Let me get you zoomed in here. See that there? This reads, the photo above is taken in 1870 and depicts a pile of bison skulls. What is that? Let me get that out the way. Salakia. A pile of bison skulls to be ground up and made into fertilizer. Now you see there's one European man on the bottom, and then the picture cuts out, but there's another European man at the top of these skulls. This is thousands upon thousands of buffalo skulls. Now, from when I was a child, I used to watch these videos on Native American folk tales and things like that. And what I understood was the buffalo was a prized cattle or a prized animal because they would eat the meat, they'd have the fur for clothing, and they'd wear the bones for decoration as well as ornaments or as well fertilizer. But you see, what the European man came and sucked us dry and ate up the fruit of our land, the corn, the wine, the oil. and shipped it all the way back to Britain or wherever the hell he wants, right? And let me see how much more I could read on this. Just going into the nation that came against us all. All the people that I named, being the 12 tribes, let me go over it one more time. Being Judah, being the so-called American Negroes. Benjamin, being the native, being the Jamaicans, Guyana, the West Indies. Levi being the Haitians. Ephraim being the Puerto Ricans. Manasseh being the so-called Cubans. Simeon being the so-called Dominicans. Zebulon being the Guatemalans, Guatemala to Panama, the so-called Mayans, right? Gad being what you would call the Native Americans, from the Dakotas, the California, all the way to Canada, right? To Reuben being the Seminole Indians, which would dwell along the Florida Keys, right? Asher being the Colombians to Uruguay, Colombia, Uruguay, Peru, etc. Issachar being the so-called Mexicans, the Azteca, right? And Naphtali being Argentina and Chile, right? Now, I say that to show us all that we dwell on this continent that's called America. North America, South America, and parts of Canada, which were taken over by French, English, Americans, and Spaniards. They all belong to one nation, and that is that fierce nation. That is that nation of fierce continent spoken about in verse 50. That is that nation from afar whose tongue we didn't understand. That is that nation with as swift as an eagle, who coincidentally or prophetically has the eagle as their symbol and their flags and etc. And just one more point on what these nations were, just to go earlier in the chapter, Deuteronomy 28:43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. They couldn't dwell with us without bringing us down. You got the Pilgrims, so-called peaceful people. They gave the Native Americans accepted them because they come speaking smooth words, but then they were destroyed by smallpox, blankets, and different diseases that they caught from these Europeans. And that's just to show you who, if you get it, you get it. That's just show you who the Israelites are as far as where they would dwell and what are some of the curses that fits them as far as what would befall them in the land that they dwelled in outside of Israel. Once they went to this land, there would then come a nation who would come against them and destroy them by taking away their food, resources, clothing, oil, jewelry. Everything will be stripped from these people. And for the banger, let me get to Deuteronomy 28 and 64. I'm going to go to 64. Right? And it reads, and the Lord Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Now that's going into, yes, we predominantly dwell in the North America, South America, and Canada, but Israel was scattered throughout all nations. So there's Israelites in China, Japan. I was reading about a specific tribe in Japan, which I personally think they might be Israelites, but it takes more research because we are scattered throughout all nations. And this tribe wasn't a big tribe; it was like a small family. And it's Israelites in India, Russia, etc. And we will serve other gods, neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. That wood is worshiping that wooden cross that they say Christ would, that people worship Jesus Christ on, and that stone is the stone of Mecca, and that stone is also going into people worshiping crystal worship, right? Just how we have the ephod, they've turned everything that we had into wickedness, right? So that's another story. 65. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord Yahweh shall give thee there a trembling heart, and a failing of eyes, and a sorrow of mind. So wherever we will be dwelling, where we have been taken over and destroyed as a people, we will still have a trembling of heart, a failing of eyes, meaning we'll look for a better day, but we won't find it. Man, I'm just hoping tomorrow better than today, knowing damn well it's not going to be. You understand? We're just hoping to stay alive. 66. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. That's plain. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were evening. Right? And at the evening thou shalt say, would God it were morning, for the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. We're living in hell here, man. This is literal death. We're walking amongst the congregation of the dead. We're praying when we wake up in the morning, we're hoping the day is over with. That's pretty much what it's saying. When the day is over with, when we're getting towards the end of the day, we're saying, oh man, I just want to sleep and get to the next day already. And then you wake up and we're just hoping every day just goes by like this, so we don't have to deal with the captivity that we're placed in. The subjugation, the oppression, the bigotry, the prejudice, the racism, the lack of freedom. And the kicker, Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And the Lord Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. To stop right there, the word Egypt in Hebrew is Matazarium, meaning double straits or captivity or struggles, extreme struggles, extreme hardships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. It was spoken to Israel that they would not see literal Egypt anymore. The land of Egypt. Not captivity, the land of Egypt. We will see captivity because the Most High is telling us here. The Lord shall bring us into Egypt again with ships. It's translated as this word Egypt. But in the Hebrew, it means captivity. So the Lord Yahweh shall bring thee into captivity again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. No man shall buy you out of that captivity. Right? There's no indentured servitude here. You serve this for 10 years and someone buys you out. No. We will serve our enemies. Who's the enemies? Well, we just look at who enslaved the natives, so-called natives, blacks, and Hispanics. And we served as bondmen and bondwomen. There is no other nation on this earth that fits these curses. So it goes into the blessings that our forefather Jacob, whose name was changed to Yasharallah, gave unto his children before his death. And then, as we disobeyed what was given to us as our heritage, being the law of the Most High God, we were forced to go under these curses from Yahweh the big man himself. And a mighty curse is that we will have to serve our enemies. Because we did not want to serve Yahweh with joyfulness and gladness of heart. So he gave us up to serve our enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen. And you know what a bondman and bondwoman is, that is a slave. And if you can point out any other people that were slave to Europeans, being Spaniards, being the French, I'll wait. And just one last precept to show you the meaning of Egypt. Exodus 20, and I'll start from 1. And God spake all these words, saying, I am Yahweh, thy God. I am the Lord Yahweh thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So, understanding that in Deuteronomy 28 and 68, the word Egypt there means bondage or captivity. So, I hope this was edifying or somewhat. I was doing it on the fly. I know a topic like this, as in breaking down the 12 tribes, takes a long time. For me personally, because I like to really go into it. So most likely I'll be doing my own studies to further this edification. Maybe compact it, maybe double up on points and compact them smaller. But to get it out there, I would give the blessings in Genesis 49, and to show what the blessings will be for our people and how that correlates to the lands we're living on. And then I would give the curses that our people will be put on, because as it says in Deuteronomy 28, there will be a sign and a wonder on the seed of Israel forever. So with that, I'm going to give it Shalom and Kwame Asherah.